Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Carrie Dillon. I'm the Managing Director of the International Textile Alliance. We are the association that puts on Interwoven Textile Fair by ITA for our members. One of those members is Moore & Giles, and we are excited to have Sackett Wood here today telling us about leather, doing a Leather 101 presentation for us. A little background on Sackett. Graduated from the University of Virginia and started his career in banking in 1987 as a commercial lender for First Union in Charlotte. He joined Moore & Giles in 1990 as a salesman, became VP of sales in 1994, and continued in that role through 2006. In 2007, Wood became the president and CEO. In 2022, Trey Petty became president of the company, and Wood remains in the role of CEO. And we are glad to have you here today. I will pass it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to ITMA for having me. I have JBS, Cisco, Masad, the Sustainable Furnishings Council, and Moore & Giles in the house. So thank you all for. So we're going to start off with a little trivia, two trivia prizes. Ask this to take a sticker off and write your name on it. And CC, I've already told CC is not allowed to win. That would be a conflict. You can participate, but and if you win, we'll deal with that later. So here are the two trivia questions. Everybody ready? Do not pull out your phone and Google or anything. That's cheating. And I have two. Yeah. You got to write the answer. Okay. So here we go. The first question is, how many cattle hides are available globally on an annual basis to be tanned? Okay. And I'm the only one that has the right answer because it's not exact, but you can be above or below. Okay, but the closest to this number wins. Second question, of those cattle hides that can be tanned, what percentage are not tanned? Meaning what happens to them if they're not tanned? And we'll talk about that, which is not good. So write it down, pass it to Carrie, and then we will, and actually you don't even need to collect it, just keep it because we're on the honor system here and I'll give you the answer at the end. And the two prizes are, first one who gets the first answer gets his or her pick of the prize, and the second answer, you get what's left. But both are great. So as Carrie said, Moore & Giles rescued me from the banking industry in 1990. I knew that I did not want to do that. And Moore & Giles, real quickly, we're from Lynchburg, Virginia, and we come from an old footwear town. Some of you have been there to see us before. But we started the company in 1933. A man at a shoe factory named Don Moore lost his job at the shoe factory, and he started the company as a finder of footwear material. So when I got there in 1990, we sold anything that went into the shoe, which is like glue, nails, thread, laces, counters, heels, bottoms, leather, polyurethane, shoe boxes. And one by one, the shoe factories closed and went to Brazil, then to China, and they closed up and down the East Coast. And in the early 90s, we pivoted, got into upholstery leather, started selling cheaper, more commodity leather that you would see at Montgomery Ward bankrupt, Sears bankrupt, JCPenney bankrupt, Levitt's bankrupt. So we pivoted in the mid 90s and really looked around and ready to wear footwear, accessories, and handbags where the material really was considered a luxury item, and took our inspiration from that and had some really reasonable success in the mid 90s with some of the manufacturers here in North Carolina. And it put us on a path to take a fashion approach to the upholstery business, to look at it visually, tactily, when we develop leathers, and that's sort of on the road we're on today. So I start this presentation with why leather. It's just, I never imagined in my life I would find something so interesting, find a material so interesting, and there's just so many wonderful things you can do about it. And there's so many great things about leather. So when you leave here today, I want you to be answering the question, why leather, to why not leather? Why not leather? Because it's got a great story, and I'm excited to share it with you. So we'll leave some time at questions at the end, and if you want to raise your hand along the way, that's fine also. It said, so this worked, right? When I think it's the tape.
Is that one progressing?
Okay. So leather today is a symbol of style. It's a symbol of gracious living. It's just considered to be a very nice material. This is a model on the runway in Milan, covered in leather. It's also ubiquitous in our daily lives. More often than not, you're either wearing it, carrying it, walking in it, or sitting in it on a daily basis. It's just a part of our daily lives. But it wasn't always like this. And so I make the point that the original runway model for leather was this gentleman. And this is Otzi. And I don't know if many of you know who, some of the leather people might know who Otzi is, but he, a group of tourists were climbing in the Italian-Austrian Alps in 1990 and saw what they thought was a dead hiker who had been frozen in ice. And they brought some people up, and it turned out that this was a man from the Stone Age who was encapsulated in a glacier and had been left perfectly intact since for 4,000 years. He is found in Bolzano, Italy, in the museum there. And for us, it's a great story about this material, because what was perfectly also preserved was 5 skins of animals that were on him. It had a bear, deer, goat, rabbit, and cowhide. And just, it's a reminder that the same thing that makes leather a luxury material today is the same thing that made it essential to early humans, that it's breathable, that it's durable, that it's long lasting, that it's soft, that it wears in over time. And so, you know, leather is this primal material that has been with us since fire. And I think people take it for granted from time to time that it just exists. But that's not the case. But it's interesting, you know, it's been a key part of human progress. When the next time you go to the Museum of Natural History and take your children in there, notice how much leather is in there. You know, when humans began to walk and to roam, they had to put something on their feet, they had to clothe themselves, they had to shelter themselves, they had to protect themselves from their enemy, they had to make weapons. All that was leather. So it's just this really interesting dynamic that's been with us so long. So if you learn nothing from me today, the definition of recycle is to make something useful out of a waste material, okay? And we are completely controlled by the global demand for beef around the world. And the tanner's role, he resides at the end of our food chain. It's really a street sweeper of our food chain. And he or she picks these doorsteps, these hides off the doorsteps of the world every day. And then he scientifically preserves it, because it's rotting and decaying the minute the takeoff comes. And then he artistically transforms it into what I would like to say makes functional, lasting luxury out of a waste material. This is the story of leather. And I think everybody, whether you're in the leather business, whether you sell leather, whether you're in a sustainable business, we have a duty to tell this story because it's a true story. You know, the hide itself represents less than 5% of the total value of the animal. And in some cases with a heifer or something, it's less than the tongue and the cheeks of the animal. So it's this forgotten part of the process. And thank goodness there are tanners around the world that do this because, and we'll talk about that more. We'll just get right into it. Transforming waste. So conservation is the prevention of a wasteful use of a resource. Okay, and so I feel like we're conservationists. Okay, I feel like that this is a role we play in our food chain that's vitally important. And so there are, and I'm not going to say how many hides are available, but there's a demand for beef that exceeds the demand for hides around the world today. Whatever's happening with eating healthier, meat and beef is a vital protein, especially in emerging countries where the global demand for beef is growing and growing. So the hides are going to be there. And so the role of the tanner is to take these hides and again, scientifically preserve them and then artistically transform them. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Our company, as a purpose statement, believes in creating a purpose and a use for every hide on earth. I think it is crazy when you hear the number today of the hides that are landfilled. So for us, and JBS will know this, every hide is equal coming into the tannery. Okay, we pay the same price for all of these hides by weight or whatever. And then it is only us, our customers, our retailers, our consumers who say, well, this hide is only good for this hide is only good for this. And we put them in little buckets. And then there's fallout from all of those buckets. So we've been working a lot to make sure that, because the reality is the worst hide and the best hide basically have the same breathability, the same durability, the same comfort. It's just aesthetically, what are we willing to accept in terms of the natural features of the hide? And so some of you know of our reclaimed line where we're taking the fallout from those buckets and we're including it in our lifestyle line, and some of our furniture manufacturers and designers are running it as well. And we've had great success with it. So, okay. I use a lot of definitions in here because I think it's important. And I think as people and advocates for this industry, the definition of leather is the skin of an animal that has been tanned. Okay. And I think that we need to be very open and honest about what is leather and what's not leather. So vegan leather is not leather. Anything with the word leather attached to it that's not leather is not leather. And you have to ask yourself, why do they even use the word? And it's because leather has meaning and relevance, and it has cachet. And when I see the authors in Architectural Digest and House Beautiful and these publications write about your projects and your furniture, I hear them talk about the leather. I don't ever hear anybody say the chairs were adorned with beautiful polyvinyl chloride. They talk about the leather. So we call that, there's nothing wrong, but leather is leather, and it has a unique place in the marketplace. The first piece of plastic, most of these are made with plastic. First piece of plastic is made in 1907. It's still with us today. So leather is a renewable resource that we have. And if people stop eating meat, when there's 75% of the world eats meat, let's say that goes to half of that, still a lot of hides. And so your question to anybody who has anything, negative about to say about leather is, what should we do with the hides? Because to landfill them would be irresponsible. And there's so many, I can't give the word to the trivia question, I have to be careful, but these amount of hides, can you imagine if these hides were all landfilled? Can you imagine the environmental, the carbon emissions from landfilling these hides is quadruple what they are just to make the leather. So it's important to know. So we'll talk about raw material. Obviously, pig, sheep, goat, all of this produces leather, but we'll just stick to cattle around here. We're doing quite a bit of shearling right now, but raw materials traded around the world on a global basis. So China's the biggest user of US hides. We buy English hides and South German hides tanned in Italy. In Spain, we use fresh hides. Fresh hides means they come in with no salt on them. So they come right from the abattoir to the tannery, which is nice. It gives us a lot of ability to make different leathers. Salt, when we salt the hides, sometimes that salt affects the epidermis a little bit. So on really full grain natural leathers, sometimes it's not ideal, but we do use a lot of salted hides, but we have to preserve it. I think probably a lot of people agree that the largest hides come from South Germany, from Northern Europe. The climate is better. There's no barbed wire. They don't brand. They've eradicated certain insects and things that got on the animal that affected it. South America has smaller hides. It usually has a hump in it, not always, but, and then, you do have brands down there. So, but every hide is valuable, and we make leather all over the world. Let me stop there. Any questions so far? Raise your hand. Tanning. So the modern form of tanning is chrome tanning. And probably 85 to 90% of the world's leather is chrome tanned. Chrome is a mineral. Chrome is in our bodies. We need chrome to live. It is a very safe, effective, efficient form of tanning. That being said, it was built and it was founded in 1875. So it's been around for a long time. I think chrome will be around for a longer time. We use trivalent chromium, chromium-3. Don't mix that up or confuse it with chrome-6 or hexavalent chromium from the Aaron Brockovich movie. Chrome is a word out there that you hear, but chrome has been around a long time, and I imagine it will be around a long time. That being said, there is a lot going on in the tanning world right now. There are a lot of new forms of tanning coming out that are worth looking at. One of the ones we're doing right now is olive tanning. Some of you have heard about it. We take the leaves from Mediterranean, which are abundant. There are enough of these leaves to tan 40% of the world's leather. We take it to a food certified lab, brew it like a tea, condense it into a syrup, and that syrup becomes a tanning agent that replaces the chrome that helps preserve the leather. So you get this really unique story of a byproduct tanning the byproduct. We've been able to get declare labels on our olive tan leathers, which if you're not familiar with declare, it's like a nutrition label for food. It meets the highest threshold for declare, which is red list free. So that we're the first ones to do that. I think others are joining in there, but there's lots of other methods out there. There's zeolite and ecotan. There's some other plant-based tannins out there. So while chrome will be around for a while, it's really a lot coming at us from the tannery standpoint about a lot of things to try. But I think for me about olive tanning is it has scale. And that we can tan 40% of the world's leather with it. That's a huge amount. I also want everybody to know that in my 30 years of business, that you cannot be a modern tanner today and be a backroom operator. The tanneries that we deal with and that our competitors deal with all over the world are highly compliant tanners with a huge sense of transparency, a huge commitment to sustainability, a huge commitment to new challenges and techniques. And I think it's important to say that because they're good stewards of the environment. They're good citizens in the communities they serve. Most tanneries are in small towns where the rivers are running through the small town. Water remains a key ingredient in leather. They're investing in modern effluent treatment programs where the water coming into the tannery is cleaner going out than when it came in. There's even a tannery in Germany I know that has their 24/7 open door policy where they have their own treatment plant, and instead of going to the municipality after they treat it, it goes directly into the river, and they have a 24/7 policy where civic organizations, students, anybody can come in and test the water. So that's the kind of people we're dealing with today. I think 50 years ago, it wasn't like that. And so we are a different organization now. And, in my opinion, the tannery business is contracting. Nobody's graduated from college right now saying, I wish I was going to be a tanner. Because to be a modern tanner today, you have to invest quite a bit of money in the water programs and in machinery and equipment. And that's what I see that the Good Tannery is doing right now. So I think you should feel good about their transparency and about their commitment to the environment. We're not perfect. It's an industrious process, but we're getting better and better each day, and we're committed to continuous improvement. So it's important for you to know that. So I love this slide because when I started, leather, leather typically had like 5 to 7 colors. Leather had hunter green, burgundy, navy, bone, and black. That's what we had. And it was a pretty sterile material when I started in terms it met a lot of like 100,000 double rubs. And, but we, just highly technical, very sterile, cold. And also the frames for leather were different. It was almost like you didn't have a collectible, you had a collection. And it was a sofa, love seat, and ottoman. You went bam in the middle of the room. And then you worked around your room to see if you could get around your leather furniture. And I just think that's changed so much. When I see the styles that we do now, there are more places to put leather in your home. They're better adapted so that you can put it in your living room, of course, but you also put it in the kitchen, the foyer, the bedroom, the study. There's lots of places to put leather. And so I think leather has entered over the last 20 years into the web, what I call the web of good design, where, they don't teach leather in design schools. And so we've been trying to, we've talked to Parsons, we've talked to students in High Point. We're taking every opportunity we can because the young people, when they hear the story of leather, they light up. They understand and they get it. I just would recall being at Parsons, and I remember the dean saying, "Oh, I think you're going to have a tough time up here." And we had 50 people in there, and they all understood what we were talking about and totally got it and were energized by it. So leather in the web of good design, it was like it was designed where there's a hotel room or you were designing stuff for High Point and you had all your fabrics and you look at your paint, your wall coverings. And then it was like, well, where can we put leather? Now I think we've done so much with color. All of us have done so much with color, because we can do amethyst and teal and Caribbean and all these really interesting colors that act cohesively with other materials like paint and wall covering and fabric. And so it's nice when we go into, a designer in New York and they're building their model room, or we go to High Point and see what's on the table to see how leather interacts with these other materials. And so it's just and there's lots of places. Leather can be a lead actor, it can be a supporting actor, it can be in the chorus, right? It can do all those things. A little touch of leather goes a long way in every room. Just little bar stools. You have a little touch of leather. So I love the web of good design. All right, here's for the manufacturers. Here's our daily challenge. I don't know where I have a swatch in here somewhere, but so this is your challenge, our challenge. We do mostly all natural leathers. We do have finished leathers, which we'll talk about in a minute, but natural leathers do not like to be kept in a lane. They are alive and moving. And when we dye them and wax them or oil them, that wax and oil and dye enters that leather differently in different places. So the challenge we have from hide to hide, within the hide, from hide to hide, and from shipment to shipment, is this sphere of gray that we all have to live in. And we keep highs and lows of each one, but it's not easy. But I would encourage you, we have a flow of color video on our website. And so you see these two hides there. I think we all agree that those are two different colors. These came in the same shipment. So just to prove our own point about the fear of color, we took these down to a factory in North Carolina and we ran it through. And the chair you see is how it came out. And I think that there's a lot of times there's so much fear, a designer specifies it, goes to the workroom, goes to the upholsterer, he calls up, says the color's off. Can't believe they didn't look at this, they're blind up there. And the immediate reaction is, well, I'm sorry, I apologize for this. And I think we don't apologize for color, we agree that these colors are different, okay? We agree that there's fear about these colors, but I think that what we're looking for on these natural leathers and what we hope to achieve is this depth of color on a frame that gives it its authenticity, it gives it its character, and makes it not so monochromatic when you look at it. This video has helped us a lot. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean we don't get outside the range sometimes, but it's been viewed 70,000 times, and I hear time and time again that people really appreciate seeing this. And so more often than not, whether it's a hotel or here in Hickory, we get it on a chair. That's what I say, let's get it on a chair and see how it looks. And usually that goes away. But I would say that these are two hides that I would never send. If Loretta ordered two hides from me for a chair at the last minute, I would never send you these two hides. And so we did this to prove a point that when you work with these leathers, they sort of blend in over time. And it's that depth of color is really what you're afraid of in the beginning. It's what you want in the end. It's not always like that, but I share my experience here to say that more often than not, it is. Okay, just real quick, 101 here, okay? This is just stuff you need to know. This is not stuff you need to use in your sales pitch. This is a snoozer in a sales pitch, but when asked, you need to know. So everything we sell is top grain leather, except that is a split, okay? So the raw hide, when it comes out, is like this thick. And sometimes we take the top part, whether it's a substance of 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters, we take the top part, and depending on how much we take from the top, we either have one split left or sometimes two, okay? So when you see the split there, we normally make suede out of that, okay? That's what suede comes from, is a split. If we just were to take this part right here at the top, we might take two splits. And so if you all have dogs, the bottom split, raw hide, is leather. So it's a reminder that the whole hide is used as often as it can be, when it can be. But so everything is top grain, and here's where we get to, so top grain is just the top of the hide of the leather. Full grain means that we have done nothing to alter the surface of the hide. Okay, it means that everything you see there is what was there when it came. It reflects the animal's life. You maybe have heel scars, you have neck wrinkles, things like that. We'll get into the pure aniline, aniline plus, semi-aniline, and things. But corrected grain simply means it's still top grain. Full grain and corrected grain are top grain. But corrected grain means we have altered the surface. We take like a buffing machine, which has a fine grit sandpaper on it, or heavy grit sandpaper, and we buff the top of it to remove all those imperfections. Okay, sometimes we leave it like that and finish it. Sometimes we'll emboss a grain on it, you know, with a roller or a plate or whatever. Sometimes, you know, some people want perfection. They want the grain to all be the same. We can do that. If you see Tribeca in our showroom, that is a corrected grain leather that we have embossed. It's not our favorite leather, but it is a leather that sells well because it's a safe leather. It's all one color, and we'll get into that in a minute. So any questions about that? I wanted to try and make this simple because it is simple, but a lot gets sort of brought up in it: full grain, corrected grain, whatever, top. It's just everything's top grain unless it's a split. And then whether it's, you know, whether we buffed it or whether we've just left it intact, just depends on what we choose with that material. So you see pure aniline, aniline plus, semi-aniline, pigmented, nubuck. Let me go to, this is the easier way for me to describe this. So when we make leather, you know, we get it to a wet loose state right now, and then we take it to crust. We start with crust. The thing of crust is just naked wood. Okay? We've got enough of the wood, you see everything. Everybody that wants to ask you, that says they don't really know exactly what they're talking about, citrus leather, aniline. Aniline is going to mean everything in that. Okay? So we'll get that. Aniline is an old medieval term, dye. What we say is we pure aniline leather is when we dye it in a bath, in a drum, with the color. We pull it out, that's pretty much all we have to do. Fully undyed leather, completely natural. And that's all we do. Think about a clear toner you stain with it. Same type of thing, very transparent. Here's a category that this is sort of a category that we came up with ourselves because it's like, it's fully anodized and then what do we do? So a lot of times, if you know our Mont Blanc line, our extra line, waxes and oils after it's dyed in the drum or maybe after the drum, but still transparent. To give it some repellency and things like that. We call that an aniline plus. So you still get the benefits of the drum dye, but there's another layer of oil, wax, lac, or something that you still can seep into the leather. We get that aniline plus. And so that's what semi-transparent, there's a semi-transparent finish to it that does the same thing. And then we get into semi-alum leather, which is really a light pigmentation, also very light pigment, for lack of a better word. We lightly cover the leather to get color consistency throughout. Still very natural feeling, but from butt to neck, belly to belly, pretty much the same color. So that's what we call it. That's semi-solid in wood. So just a light paint job across the wood. And then the solid color is just pigmented leather, where we really just put a lot of pigment on there to cover up pretty much everything, make it all one color, and that's the solid color of wood. Where is it really? You know, you always hear people talk about the old wood and how the leather ages gracefully. Here's where you are. Right? This is the area where leather evolves over time, ages gracefully, becomes more beautiful. Here's where saw says the same. Starts out looking its best on the first day. Starts out looking its best. I hope that's clear. Okay, so cleaning leather. This is the last slide, and then we'll open up for questions. Don't be a rocket scientist to try and clean leather all the time. Okay, leather is I say this with experience of 25 years of leather in my house with 3 boys who've been unkind to our furniture, and it is the leather that has survived them. It is leather that lives with us today and has evolved beautifully over time. We have replaced pretty much everything else or recovered it. And so my advice on cleaning a leather is the first thing is do no harm. And then dry cloth, damp cloth, mild soap and water. We have a leather cleaner. We have a rejuvenator on our website you can buy, as does most everyone. And they can be used, but they don't need to be used every week or every month, most often. And so I get this question everywhere I go. Well, my client has pets and kids, so we're a little worried about having leather. And my response to that is, I have leather because I have pets and kids. And, you know, our dogs sleep on the leather at night, not because we let them, because they creep up and get on there in the middle of the night on natural leathers. And I've had the sofa for 10 years. It looks great. I do rejuvenate it every now and then with a rejuvenator, but it's like once a year. Other than that, I let it be. So I think we have Why is Mont Blanc Good for Pets and Kids on our website. We have a lot of films on our website that I think are very educational that you can that you have access to and can use in your work if you find them helpful, how leather is made. But this has been looked at a lot. And you know, I've seen how these leathers perform in difficult environments, in homes and in hotels and restaurants over long periods of time. And so I just share with you, doesn't mean that we don't ever have a problem, but I just share with you that the body of work over a long period of time holds up. It gives meaning to people's projects. I always say that a designer really should get credit for specifying leather. She's going to specify leather for the Ritz-Carlton in New York in the public space. No one should walk into that public space and say, I wonder if this is leather they use. They should walk in and say, wow, look at the leather they put in here. It's fantastic. So, so that's pretty much the presentation for today. I wanted to leave time with some questions. I know we've got another, I think another program here at 2, and then we'll get into the trivia questions. So raise your hand. You've got to have one question. So, so there's a lot of legislation about that right now. I mean, I think that what I would say is everybody, all the leather business is getting smaller and cooperating and really being more united just between, in Europe and all over the world about, standing up for the material. So I don't know if that's passed, that you can say that, it's sort of the ship has sort of sailed on that. I mean, we're going to get people to stop saying it, but I think we're calling it out because, it's piggybacking on the credibility that leather does have as a material, and the performance between them is very different. How they're made is very different. If you think about a world without leather, and you think about the things that you would have to create to make more belts, make more shoes, make more handbags, make more furniture, the industrial processes would have to be created to accompany that. Leather is again a renewable resource that is at our feet every day of the week, all around the world. And if people want to invent meat in a petri dish, okay, but that's going to take some time. And so really, I go back to anytime I'm confronted, what should we do? Tell me what we should do with the huts, because to do nothing comes of nothing. Okay, and to do nothing with these hides would be an environmental blunder like you cannot believe. If you think about if we had just decided to put these hides in landfill for the last 1,000 years, the next Bill Gates would go into the landfill and say, "Is there something we can do with this? Because this is really wasteful." And so that's why our company will never achieve its goal of creating a purposeful use of every hide on earth, but we can always try. And so we're doing that now, and I'll tell you a little bit about that story with the trivia questions, because it was in our hometown where this happened, and it's been a great exercise for us to put that purpose statement to work. There's no dumb questions. I mean, I still go into design firms and am asked, "Does the leather come on a roll?" And I respectfully say, "No, it doesn't come on a roll. It's a hide." So there's a lot of misinformation about that. And so we're taking every opportunity we can to reach young people and to tell the story of leather, because it's a true story. It's a story worth telling. And I think told correctly and honestly, it resonates with a wide range of audiences. So, Retta.
What is the typical usage of a hide? How much waste is there
On the cutting room? So if you're getting a 70% yield, you're doing great. And I would be disappointed if you're getting a 50% yield. So 65 to 70. Again, yield depends on a lot of things. Depends on pattern. It depends on what us are willing to cut into the pattern. And so, I think we're looking at exercises in our lifestyle collection where we are saying we want to get a 90% yield on this. So what has to happen for us to do that? And that doesn't mean we're chopping up the pattern. It means we're maybe making sure we make smaller things out of the waste. The next frontier is scrap leather. I mean, because the scrap that falls on the floor is money to the bottom line. And we've got something in our showroom now called Habitat, which we've taken our scrap and it's ground up. It's not leather board. It's combined with another tannery scrap, and it's done with plant-based materials to create this substrate of leather that looks great, but it's not cheap. And it's just one small way we're trying to deal with scrap. But everybody has a scrap problem. We sell our scrap, which is great, and that gets used for trinkets. But if you've got a good idea about scrap, let me know, because I've been working on it for 30 years and we're going to keep working on it. What else? Okay, so who wants to take a guess at how many hides are available on a global basis to be tanned? Just say it. Just tell me what you said. 2 million. 250 million. Give me your other answers. 4 million. 4 billion. Wow, nice. Give me another answer. 80 million. 60 million. Who's got something closer than 250 million? Who said 250 million? You? Okay. Who's got anything close to that? Okay. So 352 million is the number. Okay. So you get the first choice. And you can either get this. I'm going to tell you about this leather. All right. Of that 352 million, how many don't get tanned? What percentage of that 352 million don't get tanned? Okay. 22. Okay. 40 is the winner. 42. Okay. Anybody get 41? And you got 40? And you have 42? Okay, I'll speak to you afterwards. He went first, but I'll get you something. Okay. So I'm gonna. This is so I want to tell you. We talk about our purpose statement. We have an abattoir in Lynchburg, a processor, a slaughterhouse. You can call it whatever you want to have. It is what it is. It was shut down in 1990 just because it went out of business. An entrepreneur came to Lynchburg 5 years ago and reinvigorated and started a small processing, providing local beef to high-end restaurants, grocery stores. He sells it at retail. And so I went down to see him about 3 years ago because he had come by to see him in Orange Isles, and I saw these hides being piled in a truck. And I said, "Oh, where do you send your hides?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Who takes your hides?" He goes, "I'm paying the guy to come throw them in the landfill." And it was a huge, like 300 hides. And I just envisioned. And so the easy thing for us to do would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That stinks." But he had a problem, and he's a small processor, and the big packers don't want his hides. So we are taking his hides, and that green tote, that black backpack would have been in landfill last year had it not been. We took it to St. Louis, tanned it. It's part of our Seven Hills collection online. We are trying to create demand for all of those hides. It is hard work. It is not for the faint of heart. It's not cheap, but it makes us realize that we're doing the right thing. And I'm going to a tannery tomorrow who's going to help us do more. Herman Oak in St. Louis is doing them now, and there's 2 other tanneries we're working with in our own community, in our own backyard, to keep hides out of the landfill. So don't let anybody ever tell you that the animal is killed for its hide, because that is false. That is absolutely false. And you just can take my word on that. So that's it. We have 10 minutes. If you have any other questions, I'm available if you want to come up afterwards. You and I'll talk about what I'm gonna get you. So, but thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. So thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Quite some nice prizes too.
Yeah. Cattle hides are available to be tanned on a global basis.